Good morning. Yes, it's 3:33, not 4:44. I went to bed at around 10 o'clock. I haven't had any sleep yet. You'll understand why as I get into today's message. 2012, my first ever arrest and jail time. Yesterday morning, I was attacked in my own home for driving without a license. Of course, I made every attempt to stand up for my natural rights that I have been attempting to secure for several years. I was assaulted with threats of tasing and arrested. He did not read me my rights nor produce a search warrant, which he did not have. The neighbors said they counted 9 police cars outside my home. Several cops entered my home even though the arresting officer was told I did not consent. It did not matter. And when I tried to pull away, he added the charge, resisting arrest without violence. I was talking on the phone to a friend of mine in New England when I heard a knock on my front door. Might have been a doorbell too, I don't remember. In any case, I said, I'll get back to you. And went to the front door, and there was a single police officer, a sheriff deputy, standing at my front door, and there was a single police car out in front of my house a little bit to the left of my property. It was actually in front of the next door neighbor's property. I said, how can I help you? And he began some small talk about the Mary Horgan Center, because I have a sign, the Mary Horgan Center for Spiritual Development, on my front door. And he asked about that, and he asked if I was religious and what religion I was and who I believed in. And I identified myself as a Christian, and I believe in Jesus. Of course, I believe in a whole lot more than that, but I do believe in Jesus. And then he started talking about the neighbor who lived across the street who committed suicide back a few months ago, or however long ago it's been, because he was the first officer on the scene, he told me. Anyway, then he began to ask some strange questions. Did I live alone? Was there anybody else in the house? Did I have any weapons in the house? And he started, I can't remember whether he started to walk into my house at that point or not, or no, he asked me to step out onto the porch, and I said, no, I can talk to you just fine where I am. And he started to walk into the house, and I said, you're not welcome in my house unless you have a search warrant. And he said, it's in the car. And I said, go get it. And he said, no, I can't do that. Anyway, I began to back up at this point, and he reached in and grabbed my arm. And I said, you're assaulting me. And he said, no, I'm arresting you. And I may not have it exactly right because it all happened so quickly, but this is what I remember as I've been pondering it yesterday and throughout the night. He grabbed my arm, as I said, and I tried to pull away from him. And he said, you're resisting arrest. And I looked him in the eye and I said, yes, I guess I am. And he, at that point, came into the house, tackled me onto the floor, put my right arm, in a hammer lock where my right hand was behind my right shoulder. It hurt like hell, and it still does. It really hurt. And I said, you're hurting me. He said, if you keep resisting, I'm going to tase you. I think twice he threatened to tase me in that brief exchange. And this whole thing is 5 minutes. Okay, this whole thing is about 5 minutes long at this point. He has me on the floor, pinned down with my arm bent in a position that it could never get in naturally. And he calls for backup. And all of a sudden, there were police everywhere. And as I said, the neighbors counted 9 police cars, although initially there was only 1. several police came into my house, even though they weren't allowed to. Uh, and I was just in a pair of shorts and a pair of socks. They put me in the police car, and there were still police in my house when I'm handcuffed and in the back of the police car. So I have people walking in and out of my house when I'm not even in there, with no permission whatsoever, violating again my rights. And I mentioned several times in talking to the arresting officer and to others at the jail that my rights had been violated. And from my point of view, it was a false arrest. And I would like to find out how to file a false arrest charge. I don't know exactly how to do that, but that's something I think that needs to be done. And I don't know what other steps are going to be taken at this point. Now, this all stems from last August, I found out, when I got pulled over for driving without a license and let go. I was released and I was told just go home. Then I got a summons in the middle of April, and it didn't say what it was for. It just said a summons. And I responded in writing, pointing out that I had filed the UCC-1 and challenging jurisdiction right off the bat. They never responded. A week ago, I actually sent a letter to the sheriff along with some other paperwork and asked if that case number had ever been disposed of due to my presentation and how I responded in writing. And of course, I did not get an answer. The answer was an arrest warrant filed by the state prosecutor. He showed me that on his computer as I was in the back of the car, and I couldn't read it, and I never did see it up close. I never did see any of the police report or anything. They gave me very little, but he took me to jail, and the handcuffs were so tight they were cutting into my wrist, not breaking skin, but it felt like they were cutting into my wrist. And in fact, there's still slight redness on my right wrist where it was hurting the worst. And I complained about it, and he actually did stop the car and loosen them a little bit. When he got to the jail, though, all he had brought with him was a shirt. No shoes. I had seen a policeman with a pair of shoes and a pair of my jeans, but it wasn't in the police car. So I was arrested with no shoes, and I didn't have my wallet. I didn't have anything. I asked that my car keys be left with my next door neighbor and that she contact my son, which she did, she and her husband. Anyway, when I got to the jail and going through all the processing, all the fingerprinting and pictures at various angles of me, filling out all paperwork, every time they asked me to sign my name, I put down all rights reserved. And I specifically said I'm not relinquishing any of my rights. And every single time I was asked my last name, I said my family name is Van Dyke. I would never say my last name. I would always correct them and say my family name the entire time I was there. Anyway, I was told by the arresting officer that I would spend the night in jail unless I bonded out. So they told me I could use some telephones over there to call a bonding agent, and I tried 4 of them, and none of them answered their phone. It was a Sunday morning. This was between 11 and 12 o'clock, so it's church time for a lot of people locally. Anyway, nobody answered the phone, and finally somebody said, "Mr. Van Dyke, stop trying to reach a bonding agent. We can get you out without a bond." And anyway, a lady named Lisa came up and asked me a bunch of questions, and we filled out some forms. And I had been in a little room with the door wide open, all by myself in the admitting area. And anyway, I filled out the paperwork and signed it, and I thought, well, I'm going to be getting out of here pretty soon. I'll be out of here by, I don't know, 1:30, something like that. Well, quite a while after the paperwork had been signed, I went up and stood in the doorway, and I asked how soon before they let me out. I mean, I've signed the paperwork, and I was told it'll be a few hours yet at least. I said, "Oh my goodness!" And I went back and sat down, and then they came and shut the door for the first time, so I was closed in. At no time did they give me anything to drink, any food. I didn't get released till after 4 o'clock in the afternoon, along with everybody else. They released everybody at all the men at one time, and all the women would follow later. Uh, there might have been, I don't know, 10 or 12 men released, and it looked like there were 4 women in the holding cell that would be released after us. In any case, I'm out there with no shoes, uh, and as I was leaving, the lady called back and said, "Your son Tom called a little while ago, and he's going to come and pick you up." And so I wanted to call my son, and I asked several people, about 4 or 5 people in the parking lot, I think four people, if I could use their cell phone. I saw they had a cell phone. Every one of them told me no. And anyway, I started walking in my stocking feet, wore holes in them, and I guess I walked about 2 miles. When I got to the first store, I asked to use the phone, and they told me no also. And she just silently looked at me. I said, "Please," and she just gave me a cold stare and looked at me. And when I finally got to Haverty's Furniture, there were several cars in the parking lot, and I thought, I'm going to try there. And I went in, and they let me use the phone to call my son, and he finally came and picked me up and took me home. So I didn't get home till, I don't know, between 6:30 and 7, I guess. I didn't really look at the clock. I tried to get some rest. I went into took a bath, and to try to relax. My arm was hurting like crazy. My spine, I don't know how my spine got hurt, but my tailbone still, I mean, hurts even to sit down. I'm sitting on one cheek right now, just so that my tailbone has no pressure against it. Um, anyway, that was my experience yesterday, uh, and I announced it, on Facebook. I don't know what action I'm going to be taking. They have 2 court dates, one for each charge, uh, at the end of June, the 26th and 28th, if I remember right. I'm not supposed to leave the county, and if I do, I have to ask permission to leave. And they don't want me to be driving without a license, so I'm not supposed to be driving um, anymore. I didn't read it that closely, but I also have to call in every week, released on my own recognizance. Most of the people that were in there with me that I found out what they were in was domestic violence. That seemed to be the predominant reason people were in there that day. And some of them had been in there overnight, and some of them for a couple of days, and they were being released. Anyway, as I said, that's my experience, and I'm going to be calling on Uriel, Archangel Uriel, who's in charge of um contracts and legal matters. Uh, and I don't know how I'm going to handle this, but that's the report. Uh, I promised always to tell the truth, and I'm keeping that promise, even though my friend from New England said, "Don't tell the world this, keep it to yourself." Well, that's not who I am, that's not how I do it. I put it out there, and um I did have a I did have a couple, I'm going to add this, I did have a couple of insights. I really, as I was praying in the cell after they closed the door, I was singing Amazing Grace and humming. Actually, I was doing that before the door closed as well. But I realized how inhumane the treatment of people is in prison. I saw it firsthand for the first time in my whole life. And it's unbelievable how they treat people, commanding, do this, do that. And you do it. I mean, you don't want to be beat up, and they don't have any problem with using physical violence against people that they consider less than human. And this is a really sad state of affairs. And my heart just went out to all the people that have to put up with the abuse that they get in our prison system. And not just in the United States, but all over the world. But the United States is probably one of the worst ones. And we're supposed to have the most rights. But it was just pathetic. And I ask prayers for these police and everybody that's involved. We really need an awakening that touches everybody, because ultimately that's what's going to be necessary for the change to take place. That's all I'm going to share for now. God bless you, and namaste. It hurts to raise my right arm. I couldn't even comb my hair. Anyway, namaste.